If you're going to therapy and feel like it isn't helping you, it's time to start figuring out why. You may not know this, but therapists are supposed to be providing you with evidence-based therapy. This means the kind of treatment that you're in has been scientifically proven to be helpful for your specific issue. The only problem is that there are some therapists out there who are not doing evidence-based therapy, and the licensing board probably hasn't caught up with them or doesn't know what to do with them. There aren't exactly a lot of parameters around this. Stick with us while we talk through it in the next hour about how to make sure that you're in an evidence-based therapy so that you're not wasting your time with something that hasn't been proven to work.
Any stories shared in this podcast have had names and details changed for the confidentiality of clients. Any resemblance to someone real is coincidental.
Hello everybody, thank you for joining us for today's video. Today we are going to talk about why therapy doesn't work or may get stuck if you are not using evidence-based practices. Evidence-based practice is a word or a term that I probably heard in school like 16,000 times. But it's important because the treatment modalities we use as therapists need to be evidence-based. Evidence-based meaning that there is research that shows that these are effective for treating whatever it is you're trying to treat. The issue is that there are also practices that sometimes therapists use that are not evidence-based, and there could be a reason you're getting stuck or not feeling like you're progressing or therapy's not working for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, these guys have been making fun of me a little bit because this has just been a bit of my soapbox probably forever. But, I think that when people come to therapy, you come to therapy because you want help. And you want it now, and you want it in the quickest way possible, and you want to get from point A to point B and be done with therapy. Nobody wants to be in therapy forever. And the reality is, we as therapists, hopefully, have been trained in things that have evidence saying that that's what will be effective for your treatment. That's actually what's going to get you from point A to point B. The problem is not all therapists are on the evidence-based treatment bandwagon. Or they'll take pieces of treatment that are evidence-based and mix it with stuff that's not. And I personally think that's completely unethical as a therapist to be providing that kind of treatment to somebody and not tell them. Like, if my doctor was going to try something experimental with me, I would want my doctor to tell me, hey, look, I'm going to prescribe that you do this, but it's like experimental. I'm not exactly sure how it's going to work. Or it's worked for 5 other of my clients, but there's no like real research behind it, right? I think it's completely unethical for a therapist to be providing therapy that they don't know whether it's going to work or not and not tell you that. But I mean, licensing laws and that sort of thing hasn't really caught up to some of this, or
maybe you never will.
And maybe never will, because I mean, maybe there's not a way to prove some of this, but we do know therapists who do this, who mix some of their own ideas and some of their own cultural things that are maybe helpful in that culture, but then kind of throw it together with other things and say, oh, this is going to make a difference for you.
Okay, so this is going to sound a little black and white, which I like to live my life that way, but I think this is an example that may illustrate the point, okay? If you come to therapy, you bring a set of symptoms. In the world of therapy, there are evidence-based practices that say if there's these set of symptoms, if you plug those symptoms into this evidence-based practice or treatment model, symptoms will decrease, client will feel better. That's essentially the idea, right? One that most people know is cognitive behavioral therapy. So I want to tell a very brief story about cognitive behavioral therapy. When I was in graduate school, I heard a professor of mine oftentimes talk about being an eclectic therapist. Now, the idea behind this is that you take different pieces of each therapy model to use with a client based on what that client needs. I had another professor who, when we started doing our, it's not necessarily our internship. One of the things we had to do was my university had like a student, what do they call it?
Like observation practicum kind of
It was
thing?
it was like a student practicum where the students of the university could go and get therapy for free. They had like 5 sessions per semester, right? but it was free because the psychology students and the social workers and the MFTs were the students providing the therapy. So students get free therapy from other students in these graduate programs. When we started this, he was one of the advisors that I worked with, and he was very black and white, adamant that when as a student I was doing therapy with these other students, he says, you will use cognitive behavioral therapy and you will use nothing else. We are going to study it for the next 3 or 4 weeks. I'm going to teach you the ins and outs. We are going to practice in class. And we had to record our sessions. And he says, and we're going to watch your recordings. And I'm going to ask you, why did you say this? Why did you give this as homework? Why did you that? And if you can't back up why you did it, you're going to get a poor grade in this class. And I've come to appreciate that because what he taught me was there is a model for therapy that is evidence-based, and research shows this will benefit a client with symptoms of depression. Use it. Don't go out willy-nilly and do whatever you want. This works. Do it. And I think that sometimes in therapy, the reason I wanted to bring up this example is sometimes coming in and sitting on the couch or on the chair, you kind of have to talk about the week. You have to let the things go and give information and examples to talk to the therapist about so that the therapist can gain insight and develop the treatment plan for you, right? But it's very important that we as the therapists are doing evidence-based treatment, which means we have to adhere to a model of something rather than philosophy, if you will.
Right, and a model that has been studied, that has been researched and studied, and there is evidence saying this actually works. This is actually going to help the person with this problem. Cognitive behavioral therapy is not the only one. There are lots of different evidence-based treatments. EMDR is one that we love. I love IFS. I think that all of us have these different models that we really like and that can be really helpful. But again, it's been studied, and not by me, right? Not by me and not in session with my clients. It's been studied, widely studied for years by different researchers, and they set up actual scientific studies to make sure it's going to do something. You know, I think about one client that I had who came into me, and my client had been through a whole bunch of trauma and went to another therapist. And this therapist told them that what they needed to do was go to this specific river and lay in the river, and that would resolve all of their trauma symptoms.
Isn't like an Old Testament story?
Well, this is a licensed therapist, and again, if this is a cultural belief that somebody has, I don't know which culture maybe this therapist was a part of, or if this is a cultural belief that they have. The problem is my client had absolutely no cultural belief behind that at all, and went in with these very, very debilitating symptoms, and then was told, just go lay in this river. And my client was completely distressed by this, felt like they'd received no help. And I have to be honest, as far as I know, any evidence-based treatment that I've ever learned, that is not an intervention that has been studied and scientifically proven to be helpful.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
James like, I'm going to do it.
I was going to say, if you come to my office, I'm not having you try that right now,
That's
right?
fair. You will, I think, I mean, there's definitely, we talked about it before, like if you're going to go to 10 therapists, you're going to get 10 different experiences as far as the deliveries of some of these evidence-based practices, because you have to do it with your personality and your teaching style and all those kind of things. But the difference is you're getting that foundational evidence-based practice, not just like, hey, well, I'm Jaden, I'm the therapist, and I actually feel a lot better when I go do a headstand against the wall. So that's what you need to go do for your homework. Like, that's not evidence-based. Even if it works for me, I don't think I could do a headstand. But something that just works for me doesn't count as evidence-based. Just because I like it or it feels good to me that's not evidence in and of itself, right? It requires the scientific part of it.
This is why I really like the idea of adhering to models, like the example that I shared with my professor. I think it's just important to know that at the end of the day, your doctor may not be referring you to therapy because it's a place you can go and talk about your problems. But like, there are very strategic interventions that are done here for a specific purpose and a standard protocol by which to do them. And so if you feel like you're being stuck in therapy or you feel like it's not working, it might be worth making sure that the therapist you're working with can kind of tell you what process they're using. I certainly appreciate, I had an example yesterday where I met with a new client and I laid out what my plan of attack would be for this client. And it was kind of this eye-opening experience, like, oh, this isn't just come in and talk about my anxiety. We will do that, but I have a very structured protocol by which we're going to try and manage this. So if you feel like you're being stuck in therapy, it might be worth asking your therapist what evidence-based practice is being used. Yeah.
Right, and again, it's not that there can't be more than one evidence-based practice, but it should all be evidence-based.
Yep, bingo.
Well, thank you everybody for joining us for today's episode. We hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thanks.
Bye.
If you enjoyed today's video, please like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. We've got other videos for you to check out and more exciting things coming soon. So thank you.